A man at the pinnacle of wealth and power, a wife at home, carrying his child, and a glamorous mistress stealing the spotlight. But what happens when greed and betrayal collide at the very moment new life is meant to be celebrated? In a shocking twist that rocked high society circles, billionaire mogul Victor Harrington chose to whisk his mistress away on a secret babymoon, leaving his pregnant wife, Eleanor, behind. Little did he know that one impulsive decision would unravel a carefully built empire overnight. Brace yourself for a tale of lavish lifestyles, boardroom betrayals, and one pregnant woman's brilliant revenge. Victor Harrington was the kind of man who seemed destined for opulence from birth. Born into a wealthy family in Greenwich, Connecticut, he'd possessed an effortless charm and ambition that made him a force to be reckoned with even before he earned his MBA from Harvard Business School. People close to him said he was unstoppable, a man with the cunning of a Wall Street wolf and the charm of a Hollywood star. He had cut deals in the early days. Alongside mentors who boasted legendary names, he once studied an investment portfolio under Warren Buffett's guidance at a Berkshire Hathaway internship, followed by an immersive executive program at Tesla University, where he brushed shoulders with Elon Musk. By the time he was 30, he had built Harrington Industries into a multi-million-dollar enterprise. By the time he was 40, he was on the prestigious Forbes billionaires list. Eleanor Davenport, soon to be Eleanor Harrington, first met Victor at a charity gala in Manhattan. Although her family was old money, they didn't flaunt it as visibly as the nouveau riche. She was a rising star in the philanthropic world, championing social justice causes, and her quiet grace drew Victor toward her like a magnet. The marriage was a match that made the front page of society magazines, promising to unite two powerful families in a union of wealth, influence, and mutual respect. For a long while, their life was the epitome of gilded harmony. They graced galas, inaugurated libraries, shook hands with political leaders, and jetted off to the French Riviera for impromptu vacations. Their future shone as bright as the diamond on Eleanor's left hand. But even the sturdiest empires can hide cracks. Unbeknownst to Eleanor, cracks were forming behind the scenes at Harrington Industries. Victor had an undeniable appetite for success, for excitement, and for women. When he met Bianca Suarez at a high-level conference in Dubai, it started as an innocent flirtation. She was an emerging media consultant, with her own brand of allure, mysterious, witty, and dangerously ambitious. If anyone had told Victor he was playing with fire, he would have laughed it off. After all, he was Victor Harrington, untouchable, unstoppable. But sometimes the most disastrous events start with just a spark. Over months, lunches turned into dinners, and dinners turned into clandestine weekends in exclusive resorts. Bianca introduced him to the kind of escapades he'd never even allowed himself to dream about before. While Eleanor was 3 months pregnant, carefully nurturing the next heir to the Harrington fortune, Victor found himself dancing intimately with his mistress under the shimmering skyline of Dubai, uncertain whether the rapid beating of his heart was excitement or guilt. Bianca didn't want to be a mere fling. She was calculated. She saw in Victor a chance to climb the social and financial ladder faster than any route she had previously considered. And so she stoked his ego, commiserated with his frustrations, and dangled the promise of secret passions whenever he seemed restless. If it was money and influence she wanted, Victor was more than willing to shower her with lavish gifts. To him, money was just a resource expendable and easily replenished. At first, he believed he could keep this double life separate from the pristine marriage he had built with Eleanor. His logic was twisted, but clear to him. His wife was his anchor, his old money confidant, who maintained his impeccable social standing. The Mistress was a wild indulgence. He could afford a carefully contained adventure. He had no intention of hurting Eleanor, or so he told himself. Unfortunately for Victor, the threads keeping this secret under wraps were about to fray. A confidential tip circulated in the narrow corridors of Manhattan's wealthiest cliques. A society blogger posted an unconfirmed rumor about Victor seen dining with a mysterious brunette at a private suite in the Four Seasons Hotel. Most shrugged it off as an everyday hazard of being rich and famous. False rumors swirl constantly around the extremely wealthy. But there was more to this rumor than idle chatter. For the moment, Victor thought he had it all under control. He was a master juggler, wasn't he? Everything would remain neatly balanced until it all came crashing down. As Eleanor's belly swelled with the promise of motherhood, her doctors advised a tranquil holiday to alleviate stress and welcome a sense of peace before the baby arrived. Friends whispered about the latest trend, a babymoon, a final romantic getaway for expecting couples. Eleanor secretly hoped Victor would take her somewhere calm, maybe a resort in the Maldives or a private villa in the Amalfi Coast. The dream of strolling white sandy beaches, holding Victor's hand, and relishing in the final moments of pregnancy, bliss danced in her mind. Victor, however, had a different plan entirely, a plan that was breathtakingly audacious and heartless. He decided to treat Bianca to a babymoon instead, using the ruse of an urgent business summit in Bali. For Victor, it was the ultimate indulgence, combine business with pleasure, while his wife rested at home, unaware that her husband was on the other side of the world, sipping cocktails by a turquoise infinity pool with another woman. He arranged it meticulously. He told Eleanor he was swamped with a high-stakes negotiation in Southeast Asia. Supposedly, several billionaire investors, including a silent partner, rumored to be connected with Bernard Arnault's luxury empire, had demanded an in-person meeting to finalize a partnership. The clock was ticking, he claimed. If he didn't fly out immediately, Harrington Industries risked missing a multi-billion-dollar opportunity. Concerned and weary, Eleanor kissed him goodbye, placing her hand gently over her baby bump and whispering, "Please come home safe." Half a globe away, Victor's private jet landed under the scorching Balinese sun. Bianca, exuding confidence in a linen sundress and designer sunglasses, looked every bit the radiant vacationer. It was a world apart from Eleanor's subdued maternity style back in New York. They settled into an exclusive luxury resort, one that boasted private villas ensconced amid lush tropical forests and infinity pools that seemed to spill into the horizon. To Victor, the staff was discreet, the views unparalleled, and the exclusivity absolute, the perfect setting for a forbidden escapade. But even in paradise, there were signs that things could go wrong. Rumors had circulated that a well-known Hollywood actress was staying at the resort. The paparazzi lurking outside with long-lens cameras were determined to snag any sensational shot. Victor, in his arrogance, paid them no mind. He was too busy enjoying lavish seafood dinners, couples spa treatments, and romantic beachside strolls with Bianca. He reasoned that even if a photograph leaked, he had enough influence to squash it. Money talks, and hush money screams, as he liked to say. What he didn't anticipate was that a local journalist working part-time as a bartender recognized him immediately. The journalist, named Ayu Priyanka, was a savvy freelance reporter. She knew the difference between professional business summit behavior and lovers on a secret holiday. Intrigued, she discreetly snapped a few photographs with her phone, capturing Victor and Bianca laughing over a candle-lit dinner. At first, Ayu weighed the potential consequences. Could these pictures be valuable enough to lead to a groundbreaking story in an international tabloid? Possibly. But first, she needed more solid proof, a narrative that went beyond just two people enjoying a vacation. While Victor reveled in the illusions of a perfect getaway, Eleanor was left to manage her pregnancy in New York, dealing with morning sickness doctor's appointments, and the creeping suspicion that her husband's voice over the phone sounded distant, disconnected. She found herself lying awake at night, staring at the vaulted ceiling of their penthouse, feeling a cold emptiness in their once warm bed. Something was terribly off, but she couldn't pinpoint exactly what. Her mother, Cecilia Davenport, urged her to rest and trust in Victor's dedication to their growing family. After all, he was a busy billionaire. He had always been a bit distant when major deals were on the line. The seeds of betrayal had been planted. If Victor had known the destructive potential of this trip, he might have turned the jet around before it even left the tarmac in New York. But he was blinded by Bianca's enchantments and his own audacity. Each day in Bali heightened his recklessness. He even posted a cryptic Instagram photo of palm trees and a hidden silhouette, an attempt at being clever. Inadvertently, that single post gave watchers enough clues to confirm his exact location. The stage was set for a grand reveal. The Babymoon that should have belonged to Eleanor was turning into a ticking time bomb. Sooner or later, a photo or rumor would slip through the cracks, and the moment it did, it would detonate not just Victor's marriage, but potentially the entire foundation of Harrington Industries. In the days following Victor's departure, Eleanor tried to distract herself with philanthropic work. She immersed herself in a high-profile hospital fundraiser hosted at the New York Public Library, the same halls once graced by the likes of Michael Bloomberg and philanthropic luminaries from across the nation. Yet even as she stood at the podium, acknowledging donations and delivering heartfelt speeches, an unsettling feeling gnawed at her. It was during one of these fundraisers that Eleanor bumped into her old friend, Serena Marshall, a well-connected socialite and gossip connoisseur. They embraced warmly, then retreated to a corner table where Serena's voice dropped to a whisper. "Ellie, dear, have you heard anything odd about Victor lately?" Eleanor bristled at the tone, feeling a pang of unease. She mustered a soft laugh, trying to brush off any concerns. "Funny you should ask," Eleanor replied. "He's in Bali, urgent business. Hasn't been easy on me, but you know how these deals are." Serena looked at her sympathetically, but her eyes flashed with alarm. She leaned in closer, lowering her voice further. "I heard something from a contact in Singapore. Someone said they saw Victor with a woman named Bianca Suarez, apparently a rising star in media consulting. And they weren't exactly at a boardroom table." Eleanor's heart lurched. She struggled to maintain her composure, her mind racing with possibilities. Could this be a misunderstanding? A smear attempt by a competitor? She had known Victor for years, had believed in his loyalty, though she was aware of his love for excitement. She forced a polite smile, dismissing the rumors. "I'm sure it's some confusion. You know how gossip can get twisted." Serena nodded, but the shadow in her eyes spoke volumes. "Just keep your eyes open, Ellie. If you need help, you know where to find me." That night, alone in her penthouse, Eleanor found her thoughts spiraling. She recalled the nights Victor had come home, late, the hush-hush phone calls, the vague business dinners. She scrolled through social media, scanning for clues, anything to confirm or debunk the rumors. Eventually, she stumbled upon Victor's cryptic Instagram post, palm trees in the background, a silhouette that looked suspiciously feminine. A flood of emotions overtook her. She ran to the bathroom, tears mixing with waves of nausea from her pregnancy. The baby felt her turmoil kicking inside her womb, a reminder of why she had to maintain her composure. Meanwhile, half a world away, Victor's lavish romance continued unabated. He lounged with Bianca in a cabana overlooking the ocean. They talked about launching new philanthropic initiatives, ironically enough, under Bianca's name, funded by Victor's bottomless resources. Bianca was adept at shaping narratives guiding Victor's public image. "Picture this," she said, leaning forward with sparkling eyes. "We frame you as a forward-thinking businessman who invests in youth-oriented media projects across Asia. You'll expand your market reach and look good doing it. I can even help you with the contacts and PR." Victor, enthralled, listened intently. He considered Bianca not just a lover, but a strategic mind who understood branding in a way that could amplify Harrington Industries' global presence. In his mind, he was weaving a dream, a future where he could maintain a public marriage with Eleanor, keep control of his empire, and quietly enjoy a partnership with Bianca that would catapult them both to unprecedented heights. But the cracks in that dream were starting to show. On the third day of their business trip, Victor received a text from one of his board members, Jackson Wolfe, an old friend who had initially introduced him to some of his earliest investors. The text was direct: "Call me. Urgent. Concern about rumors." Victor paled as he read the message. Could it be? But he shrugged it off. Board members worry about everything from stock fluctuation to media gossip. Still, the knot in his stomach tightened. Jackson, however, knew something that Victor didn't. News was spreading in hush-hush financial circles that the Harrington brand was vulnerable. Pioneering investors disliked uncertainty. If the rumors of Victor's scandal went public, it could undermine negotiations, spook shareholders, and create chaos. "Handle it before it blows up," Jackson's text concluded. Yet even that warning didn't shake Victor enough to abandon his tryst. He rationalized that he would handle the fallout once he returned to New York. He was Victor Harrington, after all, a man who had charmed senators out, negotiated cunning tycoons, and turned entire markets on their heads with a single announcement. A rumor or two wouldn't bring him down. Across the ocean, Eleanor was wrestling with growing doubts. She paced the penthouse, replaying every suspicious detail of the past months. Could Victor really be that brazen to take another woman on the very trip meant for them? She didn't want to believe it, but the evidence was mounting. She decided to call an old college acquaintance, Damien Cho, a private investigator who specialized in high-profile cases. "Damien," she began, her voice trembling, I need you to look into something." Discreetly. Eleanor's resolution to seek the truth was the first step toward unraveling Victor's carefully woven tapestry of lies. But it wouldn't stop there. Even she didn't realize yet that once she discovered what was truly happening, her response would be nothing short of a coup, one that would leave Victor's empire trembling at her feet. Damien Cho worked fast. He was an expert in navigating the hidden underbelly of high society scandals. Having once been hired to investigate the suspicious affairs of an actual European prince, this job was par for the course. But it carried a personal element. He knew Eleanor from her days volunteering at a local community center. He respected her warmth, her dedication. And so, when Eleanor asked for his help, he pledged to handle the matter personally. He first followed the breadcrumbs online, examining social media check-ins, cross-referencing flight logs from Teterboro Airport, where Victor often chartered private jets, combing through paparazzi shots of Indonesian resorts. It didn't take long to connect the dots. Damien discreetly messaged contacts in Bali, among them a local stringer for an American tabloid who confirmed that a wealthy American named Victor Harrington had been spotted with a woman who was decidedly not pregnant. As the puzzle pieces fell into place, Damien's chest tightened with an uneasy sense of foreboding. This wasn't just a case of a random affair. The stakes were colossal. The Harrington name carried weight in corporate boardrooms across the globe, and any scandal could rock markets and ripple through philanthropic circles. The next step was deciding how to deliver the news to Eleanor without breaking her heart entirely. Meanwhile, Eleanor found daily life increasingly difficult. She attended obstetric appointments alone, feigning a smile when the doctor asked about Victor's whereabouts. Her mother noticed the change in her demeanor. "Ellie, darling, you look so tired. Is everything all right?" Eleanor shook her head, tears forming at the corners of her eyes. "I just need some rest, Mum. I'll be okay." But the moment Cecilia left, Eleanor gave in to sobs, tears that combined heartbreak with a fierce determination. She had a baby to protect, and she would not allow uncertainty to linger. When Damien finally presented his findings, documented photos, flight logs, even a snippet of a conversation recorded by a local resort worker, Eleanor felt both devastation and a strange, cold clarity. She stared at the evidence in stony silence. The man she loved, the father of her unborn child, had chosen to spend precious days in paradise with another woman, parading their affair so openly that it had already begun to leak in social circles. But heartbreak wasn't the only emotion coursing through Eleanor. A sense of betrayal so profound that it threatened to consume her was tempered by the resilience her family had instilled in her. The Davenport lineage was filled with strong, sharp-witted individuals, some who had weathered financial crises, others who had surmounted personal tragedies. Eleanor carried that legacy in her veins. If Victor wanted to toy with her trust, she would answer in a way that made him regret underestimating her. She quietly called her personal attorney, Simone Gold, a formidable woman with an impeccable track record in corporate law. "Simone," Eleanor said softly, "I need to talk about my shares in Harrington Industries and what I might do with them if circumstances change." That phone call set off a chain of events that would reshape the corporate landscape of Harrington Industries. In an ironclad prenuptial agreement, a document Victor insisted on, there was a clause that ironically granted Eleanor a significant stake in the company if Victor ever breached certain moral turpitude conditions. At the time, neither had expected it to be relevant. After all, it was standard protective language in high society marriages to discourage reckless behavior. Now that clause became Eleanor's key to a possible coup. Late one evening, Eleanor sat with Simone in a private library. The scene was fit for a secret conspiracy. Thick velvet drapes, mahogany tables, the faint glow of a Tiffany lamp, illuminating piles of legal documents. "We have everything we need if you choose to proceed," Simone stated calmly. "You can call for a vote of no confidence, leveraging your shares, and then move to replace Victor as CEO if you prove a serious breach of conduct that jeopardizes the company." Eleanor closed her eyes, exhaling a shaky breath. He's not just a cheating husband. He's risking the company's reputation. Investors talk. Stocks drop at the mere hint of scandal. The board might push him out to save their own skins. "I just never thought I'd be the one orchestrating this." Simone placed a reassuring hand on Eleanor's. "From my experience, betrayal often forces us into decisions we never thought we'd make. But the best decisions are those made from strength, not spite." Meanwhile, across the world, Victor was blissfully unaware of the legal storm brewing in New York. His only concern was how to spin the rumors swirling around the resort. Bianca, too, was confident. Over dinner one night, she reassured him. "We can craft a PR statement that says you were networking with me for a series of upcoming deals in Southeast Asia. Bring up philanthropic collaborations in local communities, nobody will suspect a thing. Victor nodded in agreement, grateful for her cunning. It never crossed his mind that back home a pregnant Eleanor was on the brink of executing a swift and devastating plan. Simone's phone calls to board members had already begun under the guise of friendly check-ins. She was gathering allies, stoking concerns about Victor's reliability. The board, always protective of its bottom line, listened closely. After all, a scandal at the top could mean bad press, falling stock, or worse. Piece by piece, Eleanor's revolt was forming. She was no longer the timid, heartbroken wife. She was a future mother who refused to let her child inherit the aftermath of a father's betrayal. If Victor wasn't going to be a responsible partner, she would ensure he couldn't take the company down with him. In less than a week, the stage would be set for an explosive board meeting, one that would pit Eleanor's quiet determination against Victor's flamboyant arrogance. Victor returned to New York in a flurry of self-assured triumph, convinced that he had contained any rumors about his secret affair with Bianca. He strolled into his penthouse, expecting to find Eleanor in a subdued but loving mood. Instead, the apartment was cool-hushed. Even the staff seemed unusually tense. Eleanor was sitting in the living room, sipping tea, her eyes distant. The subtle tension in the air pricked at Victor's confidence, but he masked it with a charming grin. "Darling, I'm home," he announced, setting down his luggage. He reached out to kiss her cheek, but she recoiled, her expression revealing the silent storm within. "Where were you, really?" she asked softly, the tremble in her voice betraying her hurt. For a moment, Victor froze, his mind whirling with excuses. "I told you," he began, forcing composure, "negotiations in Bali. It was stressful, but—" "Stressful," Eleanor interrupted. Her voice rose slightly. "Look at me, Victor." She stood, revealing her swollen belly. "I'm the one who's pregnant with your child alone while you were off entertaining your mistress." Her words reverberated in the elegant living room, echoing amid the hush of the staff. Victor's eyes flickered with panic. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Eleanor, we shouldn't do this in front of—" She cut him off again, the tears in her eyes reflecting both pain and fury. "We shouldn't do this at all, but you left me no choice." With trembling hands, she gathered her coat and purse. "I'll be at my mother's. My attorney will be in touch." Victor felt the world tilt beneath him. "Eleanor, wait. We can talk this through." "You know I'd never—" "I know everything," she hissed, her voice cold as steel. With that, she turned on her heel and walked out, accompanied by 2 discreet bodyguards her mother had insisted she employ. The slamming door reverberated, leaving Victor in a stunned silence that belied the magnitude of the unfolding crisis. The next few days passed in a blur of chaos for Victor. He frantically texted and called Eleanor, but her responses were minimal, formal. She refused to meet alone. Then came the calls from the Harrington Industries board members. A special board meeting had been scheduled for the following week. The stated reason: urgent discussions regarding leadership and corporate strategy. The tone of the calls made Victor's stomach drop. There was no cordial small talk, no easy banter. These were men and women who smelled blood in the water. Desperate, Victor reached out to Bianca for comfort. But even she sensed the shifting currents. "We need a plan," she told him, her face pale with concern, during a hushed dinner in a secluded Michelin star restaurant. "You have to get ahead of this. Frame your trip as purely business. Remind them how indispensable you are. Show them your next big project is about to roll out." She offered him PR angles, preparing to rally her media contacts. Yet even Bianca's cunning felt insufficient against the tidal wave Eleanor had set in motion. Behind closed doors, Simone Gold was meeting with Harrington board members, presenting them evidence of Victor's risky behavior and how it jeopardized the company's reputation and future prospects. She skillfully outlined the moral turpitude clause and how it could be invoked to remove him. Meanwhile, Eleanor, hidden away at her mother's estate, tried to steady her emotions and maintain her health for the baby. She found solace in daily visits to her favorite greenhouse on the property, letting the scent of fresh blooms and the vibrancy of life remind her why she was fighting this battle so fiercely. Perhaps the most decisive ally Eleanor gained was Jackson Wolfe, the board member who'd been Victor's close friend. As the scandal threatened to burst into public view, Jackson too found himself cornered by anxious stakeholders and even the press. He'd always admired Victor's brilliance, but he couldn't deny the volatility that was now overshadowing the CEO's leadership. When Eleanor approached him with a personal appeal, asking him to place the company's welfare first, Jackson felt the weight of responsibility. After all, an empire like Harrington Industries didn't revolve around just one man. It had thousands of employees, global partners, and philanthropic obligations. A meltdown at the top could hurt them all. The tension escalated as tabloids began printing speculative articles about Victor's affair. Photos from Bali surfaced online, showing a man who looked suspiciously like Victor Harrington in an intimate embrace with a mystery woman. An onlooker claimed they overheard staff whispering Bianca's name. While some media outlets remained cautious, calling the pictures inconclusive, the digital sphere teemed with rumors. Social media users shared side-by-side comparisons of the man in Bali with official photos of Victor. The avalanche had begun. In an emergency PR move, Victor released a statement through Harrington Industries claiming he had been inspecting potential sites for philanthropic work and that Ms. Bianca Suarez was a consultant assisting in negotiations with local community leaders. The statement was riddled with corporate jargon, and critics pounced on it as an evasive half-truth. The board meeting date approached ominously. Investors whispered about the potential for a shift in leadership. Analysts on financial channels debated the seriousness of the scandal's impact. Share prices wavered slightly, but enough to create nervous chatter. All the while, Victor felt increasingly trapped, his once indomitable confidence shaken to the core. Somewhere behind the scenes, Eleanor steeled herself. She placed a hand on her baby bump, remembering why she needed to see this through. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about securing a future for her child, free from the looming shadow of a father who believed he could treat people as pawns in his personal game. She wanted to protect the legacy that her baby would one day inherit, ensuring it wasn't poisoned by Victor's self-serving choices. When the morning of the board meeting finally arrived, Manhattan buzzed with anticipation. Black SUVs lined up outside Harrington Tower. News vans prowled the streets, hoping for a glimpse of either Victor or Eleanor. Inside the building's executive conference room, the fate of one of the city's most powerful men hung in the balance. And unbeknownst to Victor, Eleanor had spent countless hours meticulously preparing for this moment. On an unseasonably cold spring morning, the towering glass facade of Harrington Tower reflected a bleak, steel-gray sky. Inside the executive conference room on the 59th floor, a series of tense discussions filled the air. Board members took their seats around a polished mahogany table. At the head sat an imposing leather chair reserved for the CEO, a seat that Victor Harrington assumed was unequivocally his. But as the clock neared 9 a.m., the tension in the room crackled with electric intensity. Victor entered, shoulders squared, hair meticulously styled, wearing a custom-tailored suit. He exuded the aura of a man used to control. but a subtle flicker in his eyes betrayed uncertainty. Next to him walked Bianca, meticulously groomed in a business outfit, ready to spin narratives. Her presence alone raised eyebrows. Traditionally, only top executives or board-invited advisors attended these pivotal meetings. Bianca, however, was neither. Whispers erupted as board members exchanged curious looks. At precisely 9 a.m., the doors swung open again. Eleanor stepped inside, supported by her attorney, Simone Gold. Wearing a subdued black dress that discreetly draped her pregnant figure, she moved with quiet, composed determination. A hush fell over the room. Heads turned, and even Victor's practiced poise faltered for an instant. This was the first time he'd seen his wife since she had walked out of the penthouse. She acknowledged the board members with a polite nod, her gaze not lingering too long on Victor. No one missed the significance of her presence, especially because she was still a major shareholder with seats on the board that her Davenport family connections had secured. Simone took a seat beside Eleanor, placing a leather briefcase on the table, the metal clasps glinting under fluorescent lights. The board chair, an elderly statesman named Arthur Norwood, cleared his throat. "Thank you all for attending this extraordinary session. We have urgent matters to discuss regarding Harrington Industries' leadership vision and recent developments in the public sphere." His gaze darted from Victor to Eleanor and back again. "This is a confidential meeting, so I expect the utmost discretion." Victor tried to seize the initiative. Standing, he projected his confident, booming voice. "Before we begin, let me address the swirling rumors. There have been malicious reports in the press about my personal life. I want to assure everyone here that these allegations are blown out of proportion. My trip to Bali was primarily for philanthropic site inspections and negotiations with prospective investors." He gestured toward Bianca. "Ms. Suarez has been an instrumental media consultant, helping me navigate international expansions and philanthropic strategies." Bianca stepped forward, her tone crisp and professional. "I understand the concerns, but I assure you, my partnership with Mr. Harrington is strictly business. We've been discussing a large-scale youth media initiative." Eleanor, calm, yet resolute, interrupted. "That's enough." She rose slowly, one hand resting protectively on her belly. Her voice was steady, resonant with an inner strength. "We're all aware of the photographic evidence. We know the media stories aren't mere fabrications, but the real issue here isn't just a personal indiscretion. It's the risk posed to this company, our company, by this scandal." She glanced around the table, meeting each board member's gaze. "I have proof of how negotiations with certain Asian partners have been compromised by the negative press. Investor confidence is wavering. And this is on top of the moral turpitude clause in Victor's contract." A stunned silence followed. Moral turpitude clauses were rarely mentioned in corporate contexts, but in high-profile marriages that intersected with business holdings, they were sometimes used to protect the company from the detrimental actions of a key figure. Victor's face paled momentarily. He cast a sharp look at Simone, recalling the prenuptial agreement's fine print that he once dismissed as boilerplate. She returned his stare with icy composure. Arthur Norwood cleared his throat again. "Mrs. Harrington, can you elaborate on the severity of these repercussions?" Simone clicked open her briefcase and pulled out neatly organized documents. "Board members here, you'll find data illustrating recent dips in stock value following the Bali scandal leaks. This is paired with the explicit language in the moral turpitude clause that Mr. Harrington personally signed. If certain actions, infidelity, damaging public scandals, put the company at risk, shareholders have the right to demand a revaluation of leadership." Victor jumped to his feet, voice trembling with a mixture of anger and fear. "This is outrageous. You're using our personal issues to stage a corporate coup. You can't do this." Jackson Wolfe spoke up, surprising Victor with the quiet resolve in his voice. "Victor, your name may be on the building, but you're not the sole owner. We all have to safeguard Harrington Industries. The press is already circling. If we lose key investors because of your personal mistakes, thousands of jobs could be at risk, not to mention our philanthropic commitments." He paused, avoiding Victor's gaze. "I'm sorry, old friend, but business is business." The tension reached a fever pitch as a motion was placed on the table. Eleanor, supported by her block of shares and quietly backed by the Davenport family's significant influence, made a formal request for a vote of no confidence in Victor Harrington as CEO. Typically, such measures took weeks to arrange. But the moral turpitude clause, combined with the urgent crisis, allowed an immediate consideration. It was unprecedented, but legal. Victor and Bianca watched in mounting horror as the votes were cast. Old alliances turned shaky. Some board members, who once owed their positions to Victor, now weighed their own survival. The result wasn't even close. A majority sided with Eleanor and Simone's proposal. The motion carried, effectively ousting Victor from the CEO position pending further negotiations regarding his stake and role in the company. Eleanor looked across the table, her eyes moist with a blend of triumph and heartbreak. "Victor, I never wanted it to come to this," she said quietly, "but you forced my hand." Stunned into silence, Victor sank into his chair. Bianca tried to speak, to offer a rebuttal or spin, but her words faltered in the face of the board's overwhelming consensus. The meeting concluded with a swirl of legal procedures. A caretaker CEO would be appointed, with an emergency leadership council to manage day-to-day operations, while a permanent replacement was sought. For all intents and purposes, Victor's reign was over. As people gathered their folders and prepared to leave, an ominous hush filled the room. The downfall of a once mighty empire head had played out in a mere hour. Eleanor, gathering her strength, exited without another word, Simone at her side. In the hallway, the press buzzed, cameras flashing. But Eleanor walked past them, a silent force of composure, stepping into a waiting car that whisked her away. Inside that car, she finally allowed herself to exhale. She gently placed both hands on her belly, feeling the baby's light kick. A swirl of conflicting emotions flooded her: sorrow, relief, fury, and the faint hope that maybe now the child she carried could one day grow into a legacy untainted by reckless betrayal. Victor had taken a mistress on a Babymoon that should have been theirs, but in that betrayal, he had also handed Eleanor the keys to the kingdom. The world of high finance reacted swiftly to the seismic shift at Harrington Industries. Within hours, the news had spread from private trading floors in Hong Kong to business lunches in London. Major outlets like the Wall Street Journal and the Financial Times dedicated front-page headlines to Victor Harrington's sudden ouster, speculating on the behind-the-scenes drama that led to it. Business analysts on CNBC questioned whether Harrington Industries could maintain its momentum without the larger-than-life charisma of its founder. But in hushed corners of society events and exclusive clubs, the whispers focused on the scandal's personal dimension. Everyone knew that Victor had been unseated, not just by the board, but by the very wife he betrayed while she was pregnant with his child. The story was salacious enough to feed tabloids for weeks, but it also showcased Eleanor's business acumen and unyielding resolve. Where once people saw her as simply Victor's gracious spouse, they now recognized a formidable woman who had deftly used a moral turpitude clause to protect herself and the company. Victor retreated to a penthouse suite at the Carlisle Hotel, a discreet refuge for the city's affluent seeking privacy amid turmoil. His phone buzzed incessantly with calls from attorneys, PR managers, and concerned allies. But not all calls were sympathetic. Some were angry investors demanding explanations, and others were from tabloids offering extravagant sums for exclusive interviews. Victor ignored most of them, drowning his sorrows in half-empty whiskey glasses. Bianca hovered around him, attempting to console him. Yet her once firm confidence now wavered as she faced the repercussions of being publicly named as the Mistress. Gossip columns buzzed with her name, some labeling her a gold digger who had orchestrated the entire fiasco to boost her media profile. Even legitimate media platforms questioned her credentials, doubting her role as a bona fide consultant. The brand she'd painstakingly built threatened to crumble, and the high-profile connections she once courted grew wary of associating with scandal. She tried to assure Victor that they still had each other, and that it was only a matter of time before they bounced back. But in the pit of his despair, her words rang hollow. Meanwhile, behind the imposing walls of the Davenport estate, Eleanor found herself grappling with mixed emotions. She had succeeded in removing Victor from the company leadership, but the personal cost weighed heavily on her. She was married to a man whose betrayal had shattered her trust. For nights on end, she lay awake, feeling the baby's gentle movements and wondering what kind of future they would have. She consulted with Simone about legal separation, maybe even divorce, but each time she hesitated, mindful of the unborn child who would inevitably link her life to Victor's in some way. While Eleanor wrestled with internal conflicts, corporate maneuvers continued at Harrington Industries. The newly appointed caretaker CEO, Lawrence Porter, a veteran executive from within the company, diligently tried to stabilize investor sentiment. He reached out to longtime partners, reminding them of the company's resilient fundamentals and diversified portfolio. But the stock still dipped further, reflecting the market's anxiety. Even seasoned analysts couldn't discount the intangible influence Victor once held. Lawrence, however, had Eleanor's backing, and Jackson Wolfe's strategic insight. Their combined efforts formed a temporary shield against a total collapse in confidence. In an attempt to turn the tide, Simone advised Eleanor to take a more visible role. "You don't have to be CEO, but your presence will reassure investors," she said gently. "Host a small event. Show your commitment to the company. Let them see that the Harrington brand is intact, anchored by someone with integrity." Eleanor was reluctant, but she recognized the necessity. Against her natural inclination for privacy, she agreed to hold a press conference to address the company's future. Titled "A New Horizon for Harrington Industries," it was carefully orchestrated, tasteful floral arrangements, minimal fanfare, and a succinct message of stability, progress, and renewed commitment to philanthropy. Eleanor spoke for only 10 minutes, but her measured tone and composed demeanor impressed even the cynics. She reiterated the strength of the firm's core businesses and announced a series of philanthropic initiatives focusing on maternal health, an unsubtle nod to her own journey. By the end, the stock saw a modest uptick, a sign that perhaps the market believed Harrington Industries could weather the storm, after all. Yet beneath the public facade of a carefully managed transition lay personal entanglements that were far from resolved. Victor watched Eleanor's press conference in his hotel suite, a feeling of muted awe stirring inside him. There she was, the woman he had wronged gracefully, commanding respect from an audience of seasoned journalists and business leaders. He couldn't help but feel a pang of regret, if not for his actions, than for his hubris that had led him here. One evening, as he swirled whiskey in a crystal tumbler, he found his thoughts drifting uncomfortably to the future. Would Eleanor proceed with a divorce? What about the baby? Would he have a place in his child's life? After everything that happened, he knew he had to attempt to fix things, at least in part. Taking a deep breath, he dialed Eleanor's number for the first time since the board meeting. The phone rang and rang until her voicemail picked up. Victor hesitated, then left a quiet message. Eleanor, I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from, but we need to talk about everything, especially the baby. I'm sorry. He wasn't sure if he expected a reply, but he knew there was no easy path forward without at least confronting the reality of the child they both were responsible for. Outside the Carlyle's windows, the city glistened under a canopy of lights. For the first time in years, Victor Harrington, once the master of the universe, felt entirely unsure of what lay ahead. A week after the historic boardroom coup, Eleanor sat in her mother's sunlit conservatory. Hothouse orchids of every hue framed the glass walls, their vibrant blossoms reminding her that life continued to flourish even in the face of strife. She absent-mindedly rubbed her baby bump, reflecting on the swirl of events that had consumed her life. She was no longer just a wife. She was a major shareholder who had pulled the strings to unseat a billionaire mogul. Yet behind the newfound respect people afforded her lay an ache of betrayal that no corporate victory could mend. Her phone buzzed. Checking it, she found a message from Victor. Please, let's talk. We owe it to ourselves and our child. Eleanor stared at the words, her heart pounding. After everything that had happened, could she face him? But she also knew that ignoring him forever wasn't an option. They had a child to consider, a future that demanded clarity, if not reconciliation. She typed a brief reply, "Tomorrow noon, the Davenport estate. Bring your attorney." It was a formal invitation, suggesting a calm, structured environment. If they were to negotiate the boundaries of their future, the setting would be one Eleanor controlled. Victor arrived the next day wearing a subdued suit that lacked his usual flashiness. Accompanying him was his personal lawyer, a soft-spoken man who looked uncomfortable from the moment they stepped onto the immaculately trimmed lawns. Eleanor greeted them in the estate's library, flanked by Simone Gold. Polite nods were exchanged, but the tension was palpable. "I appreciate you agreeing to meet," Victor began, clearing his throat. His voice was subdued, none of the brash confidence that once defined him. "I know I've caused you unbelievable pain, and I'm truly sorry. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want to ensure that I'm still part of our child's life." Eleanor studied him, trying to reconcile the man she'd once loved with the broken figure before her. "You made a choice, Victor. More than one choice, over and over, to lie to me. You destroyed the trust we had. But yes, you're still the father of this child." Her voice wavered slightly, but she pressed on. "I won't deny you the chance to be in our baby's life if you can prove you'll be a responsible parent." Simone nudged a folder across the polished table. "We have some proposed terms," she explained. "For co-parenting, child support, and possibly spousal support, should Eleanor decide to file for divorce. It's all preliminary, but it provides a framework." Victor shot a quick glance at his attorney, who nodded as he skimmed the documents. Before he could respond, Eleanor raised a hand. "But let's be clear. I expect honesty from here on out. Any more deceptions, financial or personal, and you'll lose access. Is that understood?" Swallowing hard, Victor nodded. "I understand." They navigated the intricacies of child support and visitation schedules with the same formality one would use to negotiate a business deal. Simone outlined how they'd handle expenses related to education, healthcare, and even a trust fund for the child's future. Despite the emotional undercurrent, the conversation remained measured, proving that both parties were resolute in doing what was best for the baby. Outside, the day had turned overcast clouds gathering like silent witnesses to this fateful meeting. When all the legal points had been addressed, an uneasy silence fell. Victor turned to Eleanor, voice trembling with something akin to remorse. "I know a contract can't fix this, but maybe with time." Eleanor's expression was soft, yet cautious. "I don't know if we can rebuild trust, Victor. Right now, my focus is on our child and on stabilizing Harrington Industries. I won't forgive what you did, at least not yet. But for the baby's sake, I'm willing to keep the door to communication open." Victor sighed, relief and sorrow mingling in his eyes. "Thank you. That means more than you know." After they finished, Simone escorted Victor and his lawyer to the door. Eleanor stayed behind, still seated at the heavy wooden table. The moment the door clicked shut, she buried her face in her hands, a quiet sob breaking through the composure she'd clung to all afternoon. The meeting felt like the formal dissolution of the life she once cherished and the birth of a tentative new arrangement dictated by lawyers and heartbreak. Outside, Victor paused under the estate's grand archway, looking back at the stately manor. He felt an immense sense of loss, of Eleanor, of the carefree world he once believed was his by right. All that remained was the flicker of hope that he might still salvage some shred of dignity or at least fatherhood from the wreckage. As the sun began to set, both of them were left contemplating the precarious path ahead. For Eleanor, there was the daunting task of balancing her new role in the company, impending motherhood, and the emotional toll of Victor's betrayal. For Victor, a future unspooled that no longer revolved around his unchecked desires. The affair with Bianca had scorched the once verdant life he enjoyed, leaving him to rebuild on whatever scorched earth remained. And standing at the epicenter of it all was a child not yet born, but already shaping the decisions and destinies of the two people who had brought them into this world. 2 months after the boardroom coup, Harrington Industries began to steady under interim CEO Lawrence Porter and Eleanor's quiet but guiding influence. Investor confidence, once shaken, showed signs of recovery. Eleanor, though not officially at the helm, became the moral compass the company sorely needed. Her focus shifted toward green energy in Southeast Asia and philanthropic programs in education and maternal health causes that echoed her personal transformation. While the board rallied behind her strategic insights, Eleanor embraced the final stages of pregnancy in the comfort of the Davenport estate. She and her mother Cecilia carefully prepared the nursery. The estate, adorned with family portraits and fresh blooms, became a sanctuary of reflection and resolve. Eleanor found a strange comfort in her new dual identity, mother-to-be and corporate architect. Victor, meanwhile, lived in quiet exile at the Carlisle Hotel, a far cry from the boardroom he once ruled. He made half-hearted attempts to salvage his image, TV interviews, vague apologies, even an anonymous donation to one of Eleanor's maternal health projects. But the public had moved on. Bianca Suarez had all but disappeared, reportedly in Europe, rebranding her image. Their affair, once blazing with scandal, faded into footnotes in tabloids. Victor's fall was complete. His public charm now rang hollow in empty rooms, despite all he still hoped to be part of his unborn child's life. One evening, unable to bear the silence any longer, he left Eleanor a voicemail. "We need to talk. About the baby, I'm sorry. When Eleanor heard the message, she hesitated, but she knew this conversation was inevitable. Her reply was short and firm. Tomorrow, noon. Here, bring your attorney. The next day, Victor arrived at the Davenport estate, subdued, accompanied by a lawyer who looked as uncomfortable as the situation warranted. In the library, Simone Gold stood by Eleanor's side, and together they laid out terms, co-parenting, financial responsibilities, and strict boundaries. I won't deny you access, Eleanor said, her tone even. But if there's any dishonesty, any more games, you'll lose that right. Victor nodded solemnly. I understand. They negotiated like business partners rather than former lovers. Once the legal matters were handled, an awkward silence lingered. Maybe, Victor said, voice low with time. I'm not ready to talk about forgiveness, Eleanor replied, but for our child's sake, I'll keep the door open. Weeks later, as autumn deepened, Eleanor went into labor earlier than expected. In the pre-dawn hours, amidst the sterile light of a hospital room, she gave birth to a baby boy. Tears filled her eyes as she held him. Welcome to the world, she whispered, her voice breaking. Victor arrived hours later. She could have turned him away, but didn't. He entered quietly, awestruck by the sight of their son. He's perfect, he murmured, his hands trembling as he cradled the child. Eleanor watched, uncertain but composed. Despite everything, their son deserved a future rooted in peace, not bitterness. That moment of shared awe, the only one since their world, fractured, offered a flicker of fragile possibility. The scandal had toppled a billionaire, empowered a betrayed woman, and birthed a new legacy. In this dawn-lit hospital room, the next chapter was just beginning. Thank you for joining me on this tumultuous journey of passion, power, and redemption. From a secret Bali getaway that sparked rumors in the tabloids to a dramatic boardroom coup that shook Harrington Industries, we've witnessed how betrayal and ambition can unravel even the mightiest of empires. Yet in the end, we've also seen how strength, dignity, and a fierce sense of purpose can guide us through the darkest storms. Eleanor emerged not just as a scorned wife, but as a formidable force, one who safeguarded an entire company while preparing to welcome new life into the world. If you were swept up in the twists and turns of this real-life drama novel, please show your support. Like this video, share it with friends, and subscribe to our channel for more captivating stories. Your engagement helps us continue bringing you tales that inspire intrigue and entertain. Thank you for watching.